do you win a multiple offer situation? That's really the bottom line. That's all that people want to know, right?
That's all we care about.
How do you win a multiple offer?
Well, so we could talk about that for about 3 hours. So what I would recommend, and I've taught a few classes on it, is I've kind of broke it down into 3 sections, right? There's going into the offer, there's the presenting of the offer, and then the follow-up of the offer. And I think that might be a good way, as everyone in here that's been in real estate for a couple of years could probably raise their hand. You've been in a multiple offer situation, right? So what we try to go through with our agents is figuring out what piece of the puzzle did you fail at, right? So I'm going to just kind of give you like a nugget on each kind of section. I think from a broker standpoint, one of the biggest things I call is kind of the 3 C's of contracts, which is make sure you write a clean offer, a complete offer, and a correct offer. And I think any of you guys that have had listings and have a disparity on the quality of paperwork that comes in. I remember the very first listing I ever got, how shocked I was. I think one of the offers was like at blank, and it's little things like
more of an LOI.
yeah, right. Just put your name on it and close date. So you can fill it in as you wish, right? But
They'd be more professional you come across on the offer itself.
Sure. Well, so if you can't write an acceptable offer, like a good example is, asking 3 days for the HOA docs. It's just, that's not possible for the seller to perform, right? So I think the other part before the offer is hopefully we're all, as buyer's agents, calling the listing agent, asking 1,000 questions. I know it's not, the listing agent, if there's an offer in play, that they're not really allowed to give terms per se, but you know what, as buyer's agents, it's not our job to protect the seller.
So you might as well ask.
You never know. Quite frankly, if there's already an offer on the table, I flat out ask, what is it going to take? In certain cases where maybe there's a relationship, I ask, what is the best offer? It's not my job to, police the listing agent and what they can and can't do. But I mean, negotiation is majority information gathering, right? So that's kind of leading into it. The presentation part, I think, is also important. What I really just break everything down to is, if you can assume the listing agent's going to just forward that email potentially to the seller, and I think if you write such a clear email, make it all one PDF. No brainer, put your cover letter in there as one PDF. Now it's hard to separate, the agent's gonna really take time to separate that out. And then just summarizing the email, right? Because what are we gonna do as a listing agent? You're gonna go through and have to summarize it for your seller. So as the buyer's agent, if you've already done that, I'll admit, sometimes I get an offer that's so good and I'm going, well, thanks, you kind of did my job for me, and I forward it on. So if there's certain things, almost word your offer in the email like you're talking to the seller. And I think sometimes you're gonna get that information to the seller through the listing agent. The last little piece is, and I think this is really important, is once the offer is in, that little gut feeling you start to get as every hour ticks by, take action with that. One other little tip that I like to give Luey a plug here is, we had a VA offer recently, and unfortunately I wish I could say we won it. But Luey called and talked to a listing agent for I think 20 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. Because we had to make sure we sold the VA offer and make sure that listing agent understood, it's not a bad thing, and there's not always non-allowables like there were back in the day.
Not anymore.
But I'll tell you, I'll admit, I think part of the reason we didn't get it was the follow-up. As soon as you start seeing a few hours go by, I think you kind of start to know what potentially could be going on. Maybe they're shopping an offer. Maybe it's, negotiating with a previous buyer. Yeah, and just become, you're not going to let it go. So
here's the second part.
Okay.
New question. Austin's obviously growing, right? You've been in the real estate market for a while now. I've been here almost my whole life, and it's definitely changed over the years. And probably like Houston, people tend to compartmentalize themselves in different parts of the city, right? Are you starting to see Austin maybe do that a little bit? When I'm talking about real estate agents and communities, right? It used to be you could live in North Austin, work in South Austin, right? Or vice versa. You go to dinner in East Austin, live far West Austin. Nowadays, those commute times are becoming unattainable, right, for quality of life.
Yeah.
Are you seeing agents start to compartmentalize and really, really focus on certain areas around town?
I don't know that I don't know that Austin's that big, and I'm from the Dallas area originally, so I was.
You're the wrong person to ask.
Yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask. I'm like, I always thought it was funny when I first moved here and it took 20 minutes to get somewhere. I'm like, really? It takes 45 in Dallas. So I think it's perspective. I also remember being a new agent, and Keith and I would talk about this: is what's your expertise level? Well, we have MLS, and we have cars to go preview areas. So. What I love, I live in South Austin. Would I love to have all my business in South Austin? Sure, and I do market towards that. But bottom line, if I have a qualified buyer that wants to go buy in Leander, which I'm going right after this to Leander, I don't know. I think most agents I talk to, we're specialists where we live, from a conversation standpoint.
So you big city
I think in reality, we go where our buyers want to go.
Yeah. Okay. Still,
I think it's going to take a little while.
Since 1998, so.
Then you went to Houston. That must have been a culture shock.
Well, no, I was from Houston, but I was a regional marketing director for the big balloon company, and so I learned that Austin was a small town 20 years ago, and it's still a small town. It's interesting because for me to drive across town, I would never. I don't deal with clients as much anymore, but I wouldn't do it here. But a lot of the team does.
Well, we got
20 minutes is a long time to get somewhere.
I know, but we have a good number of our South team here, and we can talk about all the deals we have going on in Liberty Hill and Lakeway and all that. So I think we still have a little ways before we.
Yeah.
Hey Jason, next question's for you because you were talking.
Always get caught in class talk.
So we were talking about multiple offer situations.
Right.
From a lender's perspective, how do you deal with that?
Well, Seth kind of stole some of my thunder on that. What we do with
Way to go, Seth.
Those big city guys.
Yeah.
we call with I call the warm fuzzy, where we'll call the listing agent, especially in any multiple offer situation. I always ask the buyer's agent if that's something they want me to do, because I don't want to overstep my boundaries and start calling people if they're not engaged with that. But if they are, and all things considered, we will kind of work up some things. I'll let them know, hey, I'll get everything up front. I'll make sure that there's no issues here. And then once you have that security of knowing, this is a W-2 client, we know their salary, we know their debts, we know their money. It's not, there's no risk involved. You don't need 21 days for financing. To have the appraisal back by the time the financing period is up, it doesn't have to be that way. So we'll go in and convince, talk to the client, kind of explain the situation. You raise your earnest money, you shorten your financing period, you call, you tell them how great the client is, and I like to add a personal element of, hey, I've been working with these clients for a while, they're amazing, they're super sweet, they're, whatever the case, they're newly married. They're newly married, they love your house, we've been looking for a while. The same thing that they do with the letters and that sort of thing. But just, and I can't tell you how many times I've had the listing agent, thank you so much for calling. At the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to who gives the most money.
I think it shows that you're going to be communicative throughout the process with them also, right?
Absolutely. That, and it's also the benefit I have is being in the same industry, working for the same company for a long period of time, is that I know a lot of agents. And if I don't know them, I'm not scared to look and Facebook stalk and hey, I know Bob that knows Susie, that's like, hey, tell Bob I'm calling, that sort of thing. Because when you have been doing it, you got 18 years, you work for a company that people know, and that's why we take such pride in making sure that reputation stands, because a lot of it's just reaching out and telling them how great they are and working on that. So.
All right, guys, we're going to open it up for some Q&A if you guys have questions for these. Paul?
Directed at Seth regarding Lynn's question. And you talked about the 3 C's and whatnot with multiple offers. Are there any kind of tricks that you put within that offer, maybe making it not contingent on the buyer's approval, or calling and asking the seller or the seller's agent if a leaseback maybe for free would push you ahead of other people? Are there any things like that you do?
One of the ones that's been helpful too is if it's kind of depends on the property. If it's newer property, mechanicals are newer. A pretty substantial option money to go look. We're not concerned. $500,000 option money. It's a conversation with your buyer to make sure they understand that. But that's been effective.
Shows you're serious, right?
Absolutely. You're walking away from that money. You're not going to do it if it's $1,000. Depending on the situation. But that's been one. you know, and then there's the new appraisal form. You know, I know everyone's unofficially been writing in all that language about, you know, how to handle an appraisal situation. So that's, you know, I'm thankful to finally have an official form for that. You know, Luey mentioned a good one is really nowadays with the whole pre-approval process is not needing third-party financing. You know, we've had a few buyers that pretty much got fully approved up front, and you know, either did something silly like made it match the option period just because you had it there anyway, or eliminate it. So.